Greetings, Clausewitz here. So in this video I want to talk about the words and the meaning in the context of military history of the word skirmisher and skirmishing. Those words coming actually from the word skirmish, and you may now wonder why I not just stated I want to talk about this. And this is the reason why. The reason why is the meaning in our language today of the word skirmish doesn't have to do so much anymore with the usage of the word skirmisher and skirmishing in context of military history. And let us just go over the official meaning of skirmish in the dictionary, and therefore of skirmisher and skirmishing, and then we will look at how it's used in military history context, and then I will talk about what I think of it and maybe what we should change or not, and let us do it. So, first of all, the meaning of skirmish, of a skirmish, is it is an episode of irregular or unplanned fighting, especially between small or outlying groups of armies or fleets. But it can also mean a short argument between people. So we already have here a non-military meaning, which seems to be coming from actually those more original military meaning. It seems that the military meaning was before, and therefore this argument, short argument definition came in the development of language, not the development but in the change of language over time. And therefore, according to the dictionary, a skirmisher is somebody who is participating in such an unplanned and irregular fight, or who is having a short argument, and skirmishing is the action of doing one of those things. So I said that skirmisher and skirmishing get in military history more a specific meaning, actually, so more a different meaning. And if you look at the Wikipedia article, for example, at skirmisher, or at the depiction of skirmishers in video games, or actually it's I think only in video games or in more game related, not maybe only video games, but in other games related media to find, not so much in films or so. So there we find actually that skirmishers were kind of troops which would be stationed alongside or ahead of the main body of the army, and would form a skirmish line to harass the enemy, and it could be infantry or cavalry. So a skirmish line normally is actually just a very broad loose formation to basically cover their own army and of course the enemy one, because they want to harass them normally with ranged weapons. This is nothing but is necessary for doing so. You can of course harass and provoke enemies with melee weapons, but it's actually the most easiest and most efficient way to do. And so even it's not very specific, but most of the cases, or actually I can recall any case where there was a reference to skirmisher or skirmishing in military history where they would actually use just melee weapons. So I would actually say that normally when people talk about it, when the word is used, it's actually really about ranged weapons. The thing is, I don't have such a problem with this meaning. I only have a problem that it actually can lead to confusion, because of the reason that it's too focused on determine a type of troop, but also describing a fighting style or a tactic troops can do. And why I'm saying this, because now we have this definition which sounds very solid at first, but if you look at Peltast of the ancient Greek, and the ancient Greece, or the ancient Greek, or the Macedonians, or even the Macedonians and the Greek, we can actually find that those guys would have good armor, or were good armored in the sense of have good shields, have helmets, even body armor, also swords and so melee weapons, and they would also fight in melee to support the more heavy infantry, and heavy in the meaning I actually described in my video, and or just of the rest of the army. Also there were a hybrid troop in those times, which would be they are a mix between hoplite and Peltast, which would be could actually skirmish in the fashion I described, but also could fight in a phalanx, so in melee would do both jobs. Also, if we look at legionaries, I have to ask, are those guys not also like skirmishing to an extent? I mean, of course they basically often the main body of the army, and they had their own skirmishers, the velites, but they had also javelins which would be thrown at the enemy to harass or even to weaken him and everything. So the point is, where do we order this in? Is it skirmishing or is it something different? But it's very similar to it. So this is what I mean with the confusion coming up, because it's not clear so anymore if you just say it's a kind of troop actually. And I would say, and this is what I propose what the meaning should be, that skirmishing is really a tactic which can perform by any troops. It doesn't matter what if the troops actually heavy infantry or light infantry. I will talk about this meaning in the next video, but it doesn't matter which kind of infantry, which kind of cavalry it is. It matters that it is able to like operate on himself, a part of the rest of the army, but in, of course, reacting range to each other. So it's like on the same battlefield, and they can would actually harass, weaken, and provoke the enemy with their ranged attacks. I would actually like tie it up to really the ranged attacks. And to be clear, so we can actually say, okay, legionaries actually skirmished. And the point is, the effect you get from like a heavy cohort of legionaries approaching the enemies and start throwing javelins is actually the same effect, or like almost the same effect you get if you take light troops in a loose formation, let them run at the enemy and throw the javelins and run back. I mean, both cases they're just evading damage. The legionaries had their big shields and body armor for this and the dense formation, but they would at the end both throw javelins at the enemy. So this is a point where I say it's so similar, I don't see a point in like, don't call it skirmishing. But they weren't like skirmishers. It wouldn't make sense to say, okay, they were skirmishers because they were also heavy infantry, or just infantry for melee or the main body. And so this is more my point here. It can also easily be applied to like longbowmen in English army. They could also be called skirmishers. They can like operate on their own from the rest of the army, harass the enemy, weaken him in the sense of killing, injuring and damaging shields or something, I guess, or armor or whatever, and can therefore provoke him. And also can retreat easily because the army is in range, and they can also do other jobs. And this is what I mean, it's not tied to it. Peltast and English longbowmen would actually also fight in melee often. And therefore it's not, don't make sense to call them like, oh, they are skirmishers, because that would imply they wouldn't do anything else. But they actually did any other things, other roles, other tasks on the battlefield, which would be applied to other troops, which we like more identify with heavy infantry. And so this is like my point, it's a tactic. And the tactic is basically this whole harassment, weakening, provoking, operating on their own, in range of their own army, and to avoid damage. Just to summarize it, it's a tactic in which the troops, infantry or cavalry, would act on their own apart from the main body armor, but still in range to retreat to it quickly. They would have the goal to harass, weakening and provoke the enemy with ranged attacks, and would retreat if danger occurs. Or basically avoid danger or avoid damage. Could be done with shields, could be done with armor, could be done with just retreating quickly. And doesn't mean how they could achieve this, because they basically, for example, what I described is often like the typical skirmisher in the ancient world, like a guy with a shield, a small shield or a javelin. Many had also bows or slings, and they would really go to the enemy in range, throwing or shooting their stuff, and if the enemy skirmishers approach, or if the enemy actually try to charge them down, they would try to retreat or actually fight a ranged match with the skirmishers and see how they do. If people start dying, they would probably also retreat. And because they were in like this loose formation, wouldn't have much equipment, it was easy to just turn and just run away. Much more easy if you were in a very dense formation with interlocking shields or whatever. And but like I said, the same is now for cavalry, which with different rules actually, because quick responding cavalry has like has basically the same movement patterns like more heavier ones, like more heavier armored. I will talk about cavalry in another video. And so I think there's like too much confusion for my taste if you just apply it to a type of troop. And it's more tactic. We say, oh, those troops, this is heavy infantry, but they could also skirmish. They would immediately know, okay, those guys are actually able to like perform heavy infantry duty and would have, but also could do the skirmishing thing. In what fashion you don't know, but I would then explain, or somebody else would look into it, but you would already have an image in your head how this army would perform. And this is the whole thing I said in my first video of this What Means videos. It's about classifications, it's about terms which have to be easy to grasp and basically mean the same every time, and that you would understand it without further information, and as the basic of it. And so yeah, this is actually all I have to say about skirmishing. Not so much to really change so much about the definition. The word skirmish, by the way, is completely fine. I don't have any problem with it. Can use it very well to describe a scene, to really say, okay, there was a skirmish between different scouts or different outlying troops, like maybe like the troops which would be more behind. It's really this basic of an unplanned, irregular fight, which is often not so long, or like often apart from the real army. Or of the real army in the context. So you get actually the idea. It doesn't matter if it's cavalry or scouts or just soldiers which were camping or so, it doesn't matter. And so this word is fine. But like I said, skirmisher or skirmishing is something different. It's connected to skirmish. You already see this. If like, of course, skirmishers or like Peltast or whatever would meet and throw the javelins, actually that is a kind of irregular fight. It is like this episode inside of a bigger picture where it's closed for itself. So it makes sense in the skirmish. This is probably where skirmish comes from like this kind of fighting, and it was applied in the language to other occasions where basically the same principle happened. So if you enjoyed this video, then please give it a like and subscribe to my channel if you not already did. I talk about a lot of military history stuff in here, and hopefully see you soon.